Vinland Saga Volume 1 is the first manga that I've read. Now, I've read White Sand by Brandon Sanderson, which I actually didn't really like that much, and that was more in the style of, I would say, a manga, but with this, it's the more traditional right to left reading. So, like, a lot of this was kind of new territory for me, but what stuck out to me the most was the way that motion is conveyed on the page compared to, I've read, like, Watchmen, and like I said, White Sand by Brandon Sanderson, where there is a clear motion and like movement to it, but the way the artist is able to draw lines within something moving that just makes it come off the page really, really well. Another thing was just facial expressions that just conveyed so much that I found it really easy to just always know which character is feeling what on top of the dialogue, where if, I'm used to more traditional reading, novels or fantasy books where you are told what a character is feeling, where this, it was, kind of like a movie or a TV show where you're kind of seeing facial expressions. Sorry, I keep trying to say animation, even though I know it's not being animated, but, and then also just what stuck out to me was the story with it and how quickly you get engaged with it. So the way it gets you engaged so fast is at the start of it, there's a really big action sequence that's really well written and really well drawn. And that actually reminded me a lot of how Brandon Sanderson usually starts a lot of his novels, especially like The Way of Kings, the first book in the Stormlight Archive series, because to get you like engaged and kind of get a taste or a teaser of what's to come. So I found that really easy to kind of translate over from reading epic fantasy books to this, because it seems like if this is a common trait with manga, then I can see where maybe Brandon Sanderson picked that up on, because I've seen Brandon Sanderson say that the start of a book is usually like really slow or can be boring, and then you have to like build up to like a big action set piece. So this is a great way to get somebody just invested right away. Now, another thing that I want to say is, if this is your first manga as well, if you're like me who has read a lot of epic fantasy books, this is a really familiar and maybe more comfortable setting to be in, since it takes place like in Iceland and they go over to like England, and it has, not that I've seen or read yet in the books, I don't know, maybe that it'll come into play more, but there hasn't been a whole lot of fantastical elements to it, but just the sword and shield combat and bow and arrow. You're going to feel really comfortable reading this. Now, without giving too much away for the story, at least this first volume, I'll just say that the main hook for it is vengeance, and I'm not going to say what the character is trying to get vengeance for. It's not like if I would say it, it wouldn't like really ruin it, because you figure it out fairly early on, but it does, so it starts off more in the future, but then it kind of flashes back, and then you start off with the character actually as a little kid. I think he's maybe like 8 years old, and he's probably like 16 or 17 in the opening prologue. And so I don't know if the next volumes are going to have him continue to be growing up, or if it's going to just start where the prologue left off. So I'm gonna eventually find out there, but I found that it was a really great way to start off the book and then just kick off the story in a really interesting way. This first volume has a lot of action and humor in it, and I really liked the balance between both of them. And then also there is a lot of heart to it as well, but with Thorfinn's family and his father and his mother and his sister. I really liked the way that they all interacted with each other, and then also just the other villagers in their town. I really liked the humor that they have with like Leif Erikson. He's a bit more animated character. Yeah, the humor always worked for me. The action always worked for me. So if you're looking to find a first manga to get into, I think this would be a really good one to start with. Now, I have watched the first 2 episodes of the Vinland Saga anime that's on Amazon, and I have watched some anime before, mainly like with Pokemon or that type of stuff from the early 2000s, but so far I've been enjoying it. I don't know if I like the animation style as much. It kind of has this like 3D crossed with like 2D traditional animation that I'm still getting used to, because in my mind, like, anime is more like hand-drawn on that kind of old school look to it. But so far I've been enjoying that as well. If there are any more manga that you would think that I would enjoy, being this is my first time, I know that Berserk gets recommended a lot are like One Piece, but if there's some more, classic ones that I may not know about, or even if there's like tips that you can for new readers, because this was like a new experience for me. So getting used to like reading from right to left was not so much of a challenge, but just something to get used to. And so I didn't know if there was like certain ways that people read panel to panel, because I tend to read it pretty fast because I'm just like reading the words, and I give like each panel, a quick glance unless there's something major going on in it. So if there's like any tips on how to read manga as well, that'd be greatly appreciated if you could comment that down below. I want to thank you for watching and see you next time.